Hey there everybody, Cinema Recap here, and today we're going to look at something called Palma. Spoilers ahead. It's a story of adventures, friendship, unconditional love, and a dog. Oh, look at that face. That's a good doggy. Okay, so the film starts off with a voice, speaking in what I assume is German, with an ungodly number of logos. And something about this film tells me that it was probably taking place back in 1977. Anyway, the film immediately draws you in by showing close-ups of what is many people's favorite breed, the German Shepherd. Pretty sure this movie takes place in Germany. So our movie begins, and you're greeted with joyous music. And at the back of your mind, you're hoping the dog doesn't die. Once you get those English subtitles on the film, you'll be able to enjoy the story. So what happens at first is the sensation of your heart sinking as you realize the guy doesn't have the right papers to bring his dog onto the plane. I forgot to mention this takes place in an airport, probably in Germany, probably in 1977. So the guy whose name I didn't catch rushes to the vet's who gets the right papers, meeting a German Karen with her child, who wants to pet the dog but isn't allowed and successfully reaches the vet's, only to learn that the poor dog has an ear infection and isn't allowed to fly. After a failed attempt to bribe the vet to give him the right documents anyway, the man speaks angrily in Russian to the stewardess and begs her to let the dog on the plane, telling her his trip is not a vacation but a business trip or something. And after a failed attempt of sweet-talking the stewardess, Russian Scarlet Joe apologizes to him and the man is forced to say goodbye to his sweet dog. And it's at this point you get those tissues out because you know it's going to be one of those types of movies. And all of that sympathy for the man quickly evaporates when he heartlessly tricks the dog into chasing a ball so he can get himself on that plane while she's distracted. And what follows is a heartbreaking scene of the dog desperately trying to chase that plane, getting back to her owner before she's quickly abandoned. And you can't help but wonder about the airport safety standards as the plane takes off anyways, with the dog running free on that runway. I don't see that happening today. So following this high-speed, adrenaline-filled chase by what we assume is airport staff, oh God, let it be a tranquilizer gun, the dog manages to evade capture. And then we're introduced to a kindly old gentleman who appears to be a retired pilot or something, seeming to live on the open grounds of the airport. He goes over and greets the dog, and our hearts collectively break a little more as we see her sad and confused face. But as luck would have it, both the dog and the old guy are exactly what the other needs. Now the scene briefly switches to a catatonic child, whose name is apparently Kolya. And he's flying on a plane as a passenger, and after a brief interaction with a Russian Britney Spears, the scene switches back to the kindly gentleman and the dog. So the dog hysterically runs back to the runway upon seeing an approaching plane, and isn't fazed at all as it comes into land, which it initially fails to do due to the obstruction that is that dog. People start to exit the plane, all confused about the presence of the dog, and oh God, it's those men again. And this time one of them has a stick. Now people familiar with dogs will laugh at the ridiculousness of this next scene because this dog is clearly super friendly. I mean, look at this big love bug. The dog's hustled onto the bus after the bus driver flees in terror. And the scene switches back to the boy, and we begin to get a little insight into his life and why he's there and so moody. Shortly after, the boy gets out of the plane, and while everyone's distracted, arguing about what to do with the evil rabid dog, the boy climbs through the window onto the bus, and we, the viewers, experience the first and beautiful scene. Now, after Dog Whisperer manages to calm the dog, and the viewers learn the German word for quiet, the dog manages to escape as the boy opens the door to the bus. The passengers, now calm, get on the bus, and the pilot addresses the boy as his son. However, we see clear tension in the relationship between them. Now the next scene is of a strict woman berating the pilot about the disaster of the recent events, and we learn in this scene that the boy's mother has died and the father had no real relationship with his son before this point. So the dog comes back with the ball and does the thing that we dog owners are so familiar with. They want you to throw it, but they don't want to give you that ball. It's so darn adorable. The man gives the dog a piece of cardboard to sleep on, and the dog makes herself at home. And elsewhere, the boy is going to his new home with his father, who's a stranger to him. Super awkward. Kolya uses his sneak abilities to attempt to get on a plane back home, having left his father's apartment. His plans are foiled, however, when the dog reveals his location, and the two run away together. Now, when Kolya is found by his father the next day, an argument gets out. culminating in the dog protecting the boy and his father leaving him behind to catch his plane. After a comedic scene in which one of the other pilots pretends there's a spider on the boss lady's jacket, the father's able to sneak onto the plane safely and pretend he was there the whole time. Meanwhile, the old pilot and Kolya speak together, and the old pilot tells the boy that if the dog had not found him hiding beneath the plane, then he would have died from the freezing temperatures. In other words, dog saved his life. Then for some reason, the old man offers the boy a coffee, which he declines. The boy learns of the dog's story when the dog runs off again at the sound of a specific plane coming into land, the same plane his owner left on. He asks about this and learns that the dog also lost a loved one. Now he sees the dog differently, so the two truly begin to bond. We get a heartfelt scene as the sun sets, with the boy telling Palma that he too misses someone. He speaks her name for the first time. Kolya then tries to find Palma's owner by asking the lady at the desk for his address so that he can write him a letter. But that fails, because apparently the dog doesn't count as a family member. I know. Makes me mad too. Now after, Palma thinks she saw her owner getting on a bus and runs after him while being pursued by security. And our hearts break once again when we realize it's not the owner. After Palma gets close enough to lick the man's hand, and he turns around. Security closes in around Palma, but thanks to Kolya, who protects her, she manages to flee, causing havoc as she does so. Now they're both found by the lady Kolya spoke to at the desk earlier, who gives him the address of Palma's owner so that he can contact him. Before we go on, like the video, smash the subscribe button and turn on that notification bell to get that full day of good luck. However, as Kolya is writing this letter, his father, the pilot, turns up and traps him there, using him to help the security guards capture Palma, which they do. Kolya watches helplessly as Palma is taken away in a van. He feels betrayed by his dad, as do the old gentleman and his daughter, the stewardess, who were present. And later that night at his father's house, the two are arguing again. Kolya telling his dad that he hates him, saying he's going to run away and live in a children's home instead. And his father agrees, not knowing what else to do. We're then subjected to another heart-wrenching scene, as his father reads the letter Kolya wrote to Palma's owner, telling him of the situation. And as this is happening, Palma is taken to the dog pound, where the dogs are neglected and left out in the rain. Our spirits are lifted once more, however, when we see Palma manage to open that window from inside the van, slip out, and free the other dogs left in the rain in the cages outside. Kolya tries to leave home in the rain, but spotted by his father, and he only gets into the car when his father tells him they're getting Palma back. But once they get there, of course, she's gone, having already escaped. Well, Palma separates from the other dogs and makes her way alone back to the airport, where she's found by Kolya, once again running to the same plane her master left in as passengers exit. And once again, her master's not there. Kolya agrees to stay with his father if Palma's allowed to live with him. They collectively agree to work to reunite her with her owner. The old pilot sings a song about cockroaches in Spanish, and Kolya says they should put an ad in the paper about Palma, which they do. And shortly after this, a reporter shows up to take a picture of Palma, resulting in the picture appearing on the front page, leading to a less than pleased lady boss. She becomes even more less than pleased when even more reporters begin to show up to take pictures, when Ivana Romanovich, or I forget who he is, someone important, visits the dog at the airport for publicity, I guess, leading to some kind of funny scenes as he admits his allergy to dogs. He's then interviewed about the dog, where he speaks about the dog's loyalty and pleads for the owner to come and reunite with his companion. So the dog's becoming famous at the airport and is accepted there, becoming more of a tourist attraction as people are fascinated and inspired by her story. We're then treated to a time-lapse of Palma as she waits, day after day, for the owner to come back, but still, no sign of him. Elsewhere, back at Kolya's house, he and his father begin to accept each other, and his father talks about his childhood, revealing that he didn't have a mother growing up. In the days that follow, Palma begins to get sick, beginning to refuse to chase after the plane as she's so often done, leading her to be caged within the sight of the landing plane for the appeal of the tourists. A visiting vet tells him the heart isn't working properly and that she may not even survive the night. Our hearts are collectively torn to shreds, a little more, as Palma sees a vision of her old master, who vanishes when she approaches him at the gates of her enclosure. Kolya begs Palma to live with him, trying to carry her in the rain, but she's refusing to stand up, seemingly having given up on life. Kolya pours his heart out, speaking of how much he misses his mother and how he feels abandoned by people. He begs Palma not to leave him, giving Palma his precious jumper knitted for him by his mom. Kolya spends the night sleeping in the enclosure alongside Palma, who wakes him in the morning, now able to stand up and showing life once again. And for the first time, Palma goes home with Kolya and his dad to their apartment, where they're dried off and taken care of. And Kolya is offered some liquor because Germany. Kolya locks himself in the car upon hearing something that the audience doesn't know yet. We learn soon after that the owner is finally returning to take Palma away, but by this point, Kolya doesn't want to let her go. Now the dad's trying to convince him to let her go because this is what she wanted, and he apologizes to Kolya, telling him that if you really love Palma, you would let her go. But things are different now. Palma's all leashed up, and Kolya doesn't want her to go. So Palma's waiting at the foot of the steps of the plane, and beyond anyone's expectations, the owner actually really does arrive, and she goes up to him, reluctantly at first, but begins to lick his face. Stop cutting onions, I'm recording. Kolya hands the lead over to the owner and walks away. Oh, last time I cried like this was Marley and me. So the owner and the father are talking. The owner admits that he regrets leaving the dog, going on to say he didn't really want the dog in the first place and that the dog was a birthday present. Due to the publicity, however, he can't give the dog to his father, who's offering to buy Palma for his son, as he'll be out of a job if he does. But just as Palma's being led onto the plane, she begins to resist, instead pulling back to be with Kolya. The owner's trying to coax Palma up the steps, but she turns and runs back to Kolya, confusing everyone. Well, she bonded with him and no longer wants to leave him. And we're all treated to a moment of tension as to what happens next, relying solely on what the father decides to do. He stops the plane, turns it off, essentially losing his license, as does his friend, who also refuses to fly. Russian Brittany asks the owner for the dog certificate, which he still doesn't have, and so the dog once again isn't allowed to fly. Palma runs off the plane immediately as her leash is let go. And then a slow motion running scene as Palma and Kolya run to each other and embrace. Everyone is happy. Credits are rolling, and we're treated to one last scene of father, son, and Palma riding in the plane together. If for any reason you want to watch another heart-wrenching movie about a dog who forever waits for his owner, please look up a film called Hachiko, A Dog's Tale. It's basically the Japanese version of this film. Oh, and did I mention, these films are based on true stories. Feel free to Google them. Dogs are both loyal and loving to the end. Moral of the story is, don't abandon your dog. They don't understand where you went, and they'll wait for you forever. And here's some credits and all that jazz. Released theatrically on March 2021 by Central Partnership, a Russian film company. As for the actors, we have Lilia the Shepherd Dog as Palma, Viktor Dobronarovov as Vyacheslav Lazarev, the Aircraft Commander, Leonid Basov as Kolya Lazarev, the Boy, and a lot of other Russian actors with names English-speaking countries would struggle to pronounce. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and think about subscribing. Go ahead and bang that bell and get all those notifications. And why not go ahead and share the video? Because, who doesn't love a movie about a dog? Oh my God, she's so cute. Please support your local dog shelter. Adopt, don't shop. And remember, a dog's life is for life, not just for Christmas. Have a wonderful day. Seriously though, how much is Boss Lady getting paid to tolerate all this? If I did anything like that at work, I'd be fired. All right, I'm out.